Well, listen, I can't tell you how honored I am to be here. I'm sure there's lots of people who are better at this than me, but I can tell you that this was a very life-changing thing when, I guess maybe 18 or 20 years ago, I guess more than 20 years ago, I was very stuck spiritually. I was a priest at the time. I'm a bishop now, but as a priest, and I didn't know that I was stuck. I had all the theology. I had finished a PhD, and I didn't realize that my emotional health was interfering with my spirituality, and it was hindering me both in the giving, but I then found out after, why can't I give better? Why can't I love better? And then I realized it was connected to me not having the capacity for some reason to receive. And there was a number of things that happened primarily at the birth of my daughter. I had a very profound experience of God's love, what I guess people would call the father heart of God, where for the first time in my life, I felt things that I believed and I knew, but not like that. It was a very amazing experience, but it didn't stay, but it put me on a quest. And that was, I realized my wife had been telling me for about 10 years at that time that I was too angry, I was moody, all these different things. But I didn't yell and I didn't scream. I didn't have sort of acting out. So I kind of dismissed her. I thought she was just too difficult. She's Swedish, so I thought maybe being a Dutchman, I thought, well, maybe that's what it was or whatever. I had no idea. But after the birth of my daughter, I realized there was something far more for me and that God had, but I didn't know how to get there. And so a number of things happened, including I started going to CHM and basically all kinds of different conferences and things, looking and trying to figure out what was keeping me and blocking me, both in the giving and the receiving of the very things that I believed in. So finally, after some time of going to the McNutts in the late 90s, I asked them, I said, well, what do you do for people who've already been through this, all your training and all your prayer things, and they're still stuck? What do you recommend? And I mean, it was kind of took some courage to even ask, because I thought I must be in the worst case scenario to done all this training and things and still find myself really missing and knowing that I hadn't kind of recovered what God had given me a glimpse of. So they said to me, the McNutt said, basically, they recommended two ministries. They recommended Elijah House, which at that time was out in Spokane. It still may be. I don't know, but I know that the Sanfords themselves, the parents, are no longer here on earth, I don't believe. But they recommend the Sanfords, and then they also recommended this group in Santa Rosa Beach, which then moved to North Carolina, and I think it might be in Birmingham now. I don't know exactly where they are, but I think they're going very strong, and it was called Restoring the Foundations. And since I live in Florida, in Gainesville, Florida, it seemed to be the wise move for me to pursue Restoring the Foundations. And so my wife and I trekked out to Santa Rosa Beach. Again, I don't think they're no longer there, but at that time they were. And we spent a week going through their process of healing. And it was very profound. So I'd love to tell you a lot about that, but nonetheless. So the teaching that they did on ungodly beliefs, which is connected to, it's all vocabulary. You have different people are talking about word curses or judgments or inner vows, these kinds of things. They're all the same. They're just different ways of saying the same thing. And that is that we often, our minds, particularly for church, are religious, we know sort of the right answers in our head, but they don't necessarily function in our hearts. That in our hearts, for example, I knew that God was in control and that he loved me and he was going to take care of me sort of in my mind. But when things were stressful, I felt like he wouldn't take care of me. He had abandoned me. He didn't like me. He was angry with me. All these other things, were my emotional reality. If everything was perfect, then all my thoughts were fine and I was okay. But as soon as there was something going on, then I was sure God was trying to punish me, or, I was terrible, whatever. I had all these different kinds of things, and we'll get through some of them tonight. But in any case, so ungodly beliefs, what the Killsters did, the people who came up with Restoring Foundations, part of what they did, the sort of the genius of what they did is connect it to those pages of the ungodly beliefs charts. And that is in all the facets of their training. They give all these ones, and they figure out through the years sort of, here's the kinds of things that most of us as human beings we struggle with. in terms of ungodly beliefs. And so in diagnosing that, then I was able to see a number of different of these areas and then work through them. And so now I'm going to kind of go back and we'll look at the notes a little bit, and then we'll look at those charts and we'll talk about how that works. So am I making any sense so far? I've been trying to boil down, 50 or 60 pages, 30 pages of direct notes into like 2 pages, and I ended up with 7 pages plus the charts. So I'm, it's a lot, but I think we've got to try at least to expose you to these things, and I'm sure that you're going to be able to grow and apply them. So anyway, if you look here, let's talk about just a belief system. A belief system includes our beliefs, decisions, attitudes, agreements, judgments, expectations, vows, and oaths. Any beliefs that agree with God's word, agree with God, both his word, his character, his nature, and those ways, those are godly beliefs. And, we hopefully are exposed to those things in all kinds of relational as well as teaching throughout our lives. But often, even as we perhaps know what God says, often other beliefs, because of other negative experiences, crop in and take a good part of our belief system. And that was certainly the case with myself. So any beliefs that don't agree with God, his word, his nature, and his character, contribute to our ungodly beliefs. So, I did a PhD at Oxford in theology, but on my bad days, even though I knew God was love and I knew Jesus died for me on the cross, on my bad days, I felt like if God could, he would punish me severely. I had all these things that God was really angry. I had a picture of God that really expressed the devil, not God. And I was unaware that my mind that knew the right answers was in so much disagreement with some of the hurts and things that I experienced in my life in the church and in my very religious family. So create a lot of conflict. So unfortunately, many of the parts of our belief system are formed by ungodly beliefs, and those ungodly beliefs and attitudes and expectations are formed by different things. Number one, by hurts and traumas, negative experiences, and words people say to you. As a child, when something went wrong, I can hear my father saying, "You make me sick," or many other things that were very hurtful and painful for me, and made me feel that I had a responsibility to fix things, and that bad things were sort of God's punishment on a family or whatever, and it was connected to me. I remember, to tell you how, let's extrapolate many ways in my life. So hurts and traumas, negative experiences. I have 2 sisters and a brother, and my one sister and my other brother were the favorites in the family. And so, I was told all the time that I was loved, but it was clear that my parents didn't like me as much as they did my sister or my brother. And looking back, as my parents grew and experienced a lot of healing themselves, they said, hey, and they've owned that. I wasn't making it up. So that extrapolating to God is my parents, the way that they love me. So I sort of determined, without ever hearing anyone say the words, but what I figured is God loved everybody, but doesn't like everybody. He loves everyone the same, but he didn't like everybody. And for whatever reason, I was sure he didn't like me like he did other people. And so I interpreted that the painful experiences and things that I experienced created a mindset and then a template from which I interpret the world. And that was an ungodly belief. And that affected me in all kinds of levels. So then I felt like I had to work twice as hard to be loved. And there's all kinds of interacting ungodly beliefs that came into play in my life that had me, really worn out and wearing out other people with all my stress and all my perfectionism and all these things. I didn't want to do anything that would trigger God's upset with me that I suppose was there. And so became very legalistic and judgmental and all kinds of things, all connected to a number of these things. So beliefs are also formed by the pain of your real life experiences, which have been operating in you since childhood about yourselves, others, and God's. Some of those are direct, and again, some of those are inferred. Like I had lots of beliefs about God that were inferred because of the relationship in my family. So any questions so far? It's pretty straightforward. Okay. All right, so life experiences, family heritage, these may be generational lies operating through our family. So there are situations where people have experienced as groups, we can look at the Cajuns, the Jews, African Americans who have had incredibly painful experiences over long periods of time in which through the traumas and abuse and different things, this affected the way in which their expectation for good things in the future have really been damaged, reasonably so. So there's lots of beliefs. And so sometimes you can even see that generationally in a family as well as racially. Anyway, not hard to see. I just got back from a couple of weeks in Israel, spending time with a non-believing Jewish tour guide and having him share his heart about his parents going through the Holocaust and being in the concentration camps and being so open with us. He really honored us as he shared about that and how he grew up. And in his 70s had figured out he didn't have the vocabulary to say it. We're saying like ungodly beliefs, but the ways in which the trauma of his parents influence him and the way he raised his children and, et cetera, et cetera. These things happen. So we teach that which we're taught. And so we pass the negatives on. And of course, more is caught than taught. It's not simply what's said, it's what we take in and observe. And then also the natural world and the mindset of the culture, et cetera, has us value some things more and less. And of course, that affects us depending on how we see ourselves measuring up and comparing to other people. All right. Any questions so far? All right. So they would interrupt me, right, Kathleen? Yes, so I've got a question. Yes, sir. I see a hand. Please, go ahead. I guess you're muted so far. Let's see if we can unmute you.
Unmute, Richard.
I just did it.
Okay.
Did you say the Christian, the Jewish guide was a disbeliever?
This particular guy that we had was not a believer in Jesus as the Messiah. Yes.
Oh, okay. Fine.
Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
Sorry. Yeah.
Sure. I did.
Yeah. We were in Israel and the guy was a
disbeliever of God, period. I don't know.
Actually, because his parents were Orthodox Jews, but because of what happened, it kind of blew the fuses. They went through as children to the concentration camps and they kind of gave up. And it was a very heartbreaking story at so many levels, but I don't want to get too far off on that now, but they actually gave up and they died as atheists in that sense. They didn't know how to put together all these things. So anyway, but don't want to go too far. So the perfect ungodly belief is going to be one that appears to be absolutely true. And so there's things like no one loves me. We may experience not being loved or not being loved well. We have we could be abused. All kinds of things could happen to us. And at that level, they're factual and they've happened to us. And we're not trying to deny the things that happen and the facts of our lives. But the truth is what God says. And so what happens is when we're wounded, we make conclusions at which we extrapolate into other things. So for example, I've worked in Gainesville for many years and with many college students that would go through a breakup with a girlfriend or a boyfriend, and they would be experienced absolutely go into clinical depression. And I was able to figure out that a lot of them, that the thing was, they may not even like that boyfriend or girlfriend that much. And in some cases, they were even trying to break up with the other person. But what I realized what was happening is the lie was not so much that I broke up with this person or that person, but the lie was I'm never going to be loved. And so that deep fear that they would never be loved was exacerbated by the breakup of the relationship. And so that begins to take hold of them, and it began to bring them into depression and also cause them to deflect and not be open to the people who were interested and did love them and care for them. So you had this cycle that our beliefs end up creating, our experiences end up creating opportunity for us to make conclusions. And those conclusions, if they're not formed by God's template of interpretation, then in various ways we'll begin to determine not just that something happened, but that it is sort of a global thing within our life, and that can cause tremendous pain. Let's look down. If we go down just to the belief expectation cycle and just see how this works. So the experience, let's just look at something, again, sort of easy one to put a handle on. The breakup of boyfriend or girlfriend of these college students. So again, the pain of that and maybe the feelings of rejection or isolation, loneliness, grief, whatever they're going through, the belief then becomes not just, again, that we broke up, but that I'm never going to be loved. And that it's easy in those times of heartache for them to take, and if the enemy suggests, et cetera, other wounds that they have, believing this lie that they're never going to be loved. And that creates an expectation. So those expectations of which are negative and people don't seem to like them or don't care about them get magnified because those things correlate with their expectation, what they believe. And those situations in which are contrary, where those people or other people might be open to love them or care about them, those things, because they disagree with what they're now holding as a belief, they tend to reject those things and dismiss them and avoid them. And they end up getting deeper and deeper and behaving in ways that actually creates the very thing that they're afraid of, because they act as people who are rejected, no one would want them, or are angry at people for rejecting them even before they do, or whatever. So you get this cycle that goes on as people are wounded. And this happened to me as a child in various ways, and as an adult, things that I had no idea how it was operating, but my emotional health was not very high, and I had no idea. You grow up and you think, you're ordained or whatever. You're an adult. You graduate college or whatever that is, and you don't realize that intellectually being 25 or 30 or whatever it is does not mean that we're there emotionally. And in the places at which I was not, I had still stuck emotionally with my ungodly beliefs. I was stuck at 6 or 10 or 12 or 16 or whatever it was. And those things were hindering me. And by God's grace and mercy, eventually got a lot of help for that. And anyway, so this particular teaching was really helpful. And this is part of why, by the way, people can go through a similar experience and not seem to have long-term damage in the same ways. But part of it is based upon the conclusion people draw from their abuse or traumas, or whatever happened. It could be going through a hurricane. It doesn't have to be any particular thing, but meaning in these things that happen, it's how we interpret them. So we have emotional hurts and things that happen. That's the emotional wound, right? But the conclusion that we make about that and the expectations that are made out of that, that's the ungodly belief. That's when then we believe, I'll never be loved. So people will say that, I'll never be loved, I'll never be wanted, I'll never be cared for. They go through divorce. Nobody would ever want me. One of the big things I did when things would go bad, I'd said, I've missed God's best for my life. It's not going to happen. Whatever good that was supposed to happen, I've messed up somehow, and God doesn't like me, and the good things aren't going to come. And so I was fully committed to that. And I didn't exactly know what I had done. I mean, not that I was some perfect person, but it was just that I just had this deep sense of shame and being defective. And so I believed that whatever I had done it, and God was not for me, even though the Bible told me. And I could preach a sermon and tell you, this is what the Bible said. And as long as I was thinking about you, I could believe that. It's just when it was about me, it was a very different thing because of my own unbelief and the ungodly beliefs that I had. We're still tracking okay. The results of ungodly belief. Do we have any hands up? Yes, ma'am. I see a couple. Let's get those. Yes, please. Somebody unmute yourself and let's hear
Deborah,
from you.
are you wanting to speak? Okay, they were just waving at you.
Oh, there's waving. Okay. Well, I'll wave back. I'm sorry. Okay, forgive me. All right. So the ungodly beliefs, they result in things like a poor self-image, a warped sense of significance. In alcoholic families, you have the hero child who the way that he or she is trying to overcome the shame of the family is to be so great, and to have such a response, this heroic response to overcome sort of the shame of the dysfunction that they experience as children. So the significance can be, the whole world depends upon me. Children, when they're little, they believe that their choices are affecting the whole universe. That's part of a developmental stage that we go through. But often because of trauma, people are stuck. So, my father, who was severely abused as a child, even if his football team lost, he thought somehow, because he had done something wrong that week, that's why his football team would lose. He carried tremendous amounts of shame and ungodly beliefs and conclusions connected to the pain of his life. And he was stuck in these stages as a little boy. And yet he was a man, but he was reacting to these things and had at that time had not worked through them. So the warp of sense of significance can be either that we feel incredibly insignificant, or people can come up with a false self in responses and sort of kind of buy into sort of a self-grandiosity in which they have to become these hero people to overcome. And so they tend to be very driven and have a exaggerated sense of importance. But of course, that's not going to go well for very long, but nonetheless, maybe until we're 40 or so, you might do that, but it comes back eventually. But it creates, of course, a deep sense of insecurity and a great need to strive to be charming, to be whatever, to do whatever it takes to find acceptance, because we feel like we're got all these, the piece of Swiss cheese with all these holes, and trying to work in such a way that people won't see those and they'll see the good. And so people often, really knock themselves out and just give all their emotional energy so that other people will think well of them, because on the inside they're feeling so defective and so broken, and they don't want anyone to see that. So they don't realize that people don't see it. But since we don't realize that, we do all this stuff to try to be accepted and loved. All right, we tracking still? All right, so now there's the ungodly beliefs in terms of what to do and how to pray through them. So can we just look through the list at the very bottom of this notes file, like from page 8 to 13, I think are the copy of that, but you also have a separate file. But let's look through, yeah, that's great. Let's look through this sheet. There's these various themes. And so we have the ones about ourselves and then the ones about others. And if we had more time, I wanted to give you even more sheets about how this works with in a marriage, some of the common ungodly beliefs and the systems we have as men and women in marriages, and also, there's many of these kinds of things, but again, we only have 60 minutes to mess with this. So I realize I don't want to give you, I've given you an awful lot. Let's do that, but there's a lot more, but this should be very helpful. Let's see. So in terms of rejection, which is one of the most common kind of wounds that we have, no matter how wonderful our families in life is, often there's this deep sense of not belonging and always being an outsider. I'm from, my family's from West Virginia, and there's a deep sense in Appalachia of people who feel lots of reasons of Scotch-Irish being moved around and different things. But you'll see even groups of people have this deep sense, and you have a whole group where everyone feels like an outsider. Anyway, that's one that don't belong, not fitting in. My feelings don't count. My wife had really good parents, but at one moment of exasperation, my father-in-law said to my wife when she was maybe 12, do you have to be so emotional? And he was really a good dad, and he's still alive. He was an excellent dad. But the pain of that at that particular moment, it took on a tremendous weight, as if he had hit her with a hammer, and that kind of got lodged and caused a break between her and him. And yet it was really not consistent with the way he raised her and loved her. But on that thing, she felt like her feelings didn't count. And that was an incredibly wounding experience. And then I wasn't real good in the days of listening early. I was kind of overwhelmed myself, and I sure didn't want to hear anything that was negative, not from I was trying to bury all my negative emotions, let alone listen lovingly to hers. And anyway, we got a lot to work through. No one will love me or care about me just for myself. So maybe it's our money, or just because we have a certain gift. Sometimes parents will say, you're the smart one, you're the hard worker, you're the pretty one, you're the handsome one, you're the athletic one, and kind of they mean to be affirming us, but those things ultimately make people think, or can make people think, oh, then this is who I am. If I weren't hardworking, I wouldn't be loved. Or if I wasn't good in sports, or people end up the enemy is the enemy, and so turn these things around to make them think, or to make us think that we're not going to be loved or cared for just for being ourselves. Always be lonely. The other person's not going to be there for me. either no one will be there to love me to begin with, or I'll find someone, but they won't really ever care to know me, love me. And of course, with those kind of expectations, that sets us up for lots of heartache and pain. I'm going to isolate myself so I won't be vulnerable or hurt. I'm going to put up walls, and I'm not going to cry. I'm not going to respond. And people kind of get their fuses hurt and blown, and they lock them down. And then so many years pass, they don't know how to open them back up. And sometimes that's deliberate. You know, I'm not going to let them see me cry. I'm not going to let them see me be weak. And then locking that down, years later, can't figure out why we can't feel. And there's this numbness. If it weren't for God's grace and his spirit, some of these things that they happen at certain places and we don't remember them, it takes a real grace of the Lord to help us to find them so we can undo the decisions and conclusions of the will. So unworthiness, guilt, and shame. I'm not worthy to receive anything from God. Sometimes just the way that grace is taught, anyway, that's not correctly, but anyway, a lot of people feel very unworthy. I certainly did. I'm the problem. I was told as a child I was the problem, and I certainly believed that I was the problem. So no matter what was going on, I figured somehow it was my fault. That was a tough one. I'm a bad person. If you knew the real me, you would reject me. Again, these are, when the Kilsters put these lists together, I mean, because there's so many, but these were so common, which I got great encouragement from, because I found so many of them were so close to what connected for me. And I thought, oh, I'm not, I thought I was the only person that felt these ways. And it was encouraging to know that other people have felt this and had gotten better, that the Lord had healed them and walked them through it. So wearing a mask or posing, or men, we often say they're posing behind accomplishments or different things. Anyway, don't want people to reject us, and we often present a false self. Messed up so badly that I've missed God's best for me. When it's shame, remember, it doesn't have to, guilt is connected to something that we've done. So we might say, well, because I did this, or this is why. But when it's shame, there's not necessarily any connection to any specific event. It's just this deep sense that that God doesn't love us, and we missed the best, and there's no way to get back on track. I hate to give one away here, but I'll tell you, that was such a big one for me. Now, when you go through these, you have to restate them. So I didn't really have the I've messed up so badly. So when I wrote out my ungodly belief, I just wrote out, I've missed God's best for me. I felt that so strongly. I couldn't imagine that it wasn't the truth. When I prayed and listened to the Holy Spirit, God just surprised me. He said, certainly you've made mistakes, but my best is wherever I am. So whenever you return back to me, there's always a new best. And it was so liberating to think, oh my goodness, whatever I've done, I've been forgiven, and he loves me. And even if I made a mistake or something and missed this turn or did this, there's always the opportunity as a return to God. His best is where he is. Now, this is 22, I think it's 22 years later after I did that. That is still something of which I think about and feel encouraged about. Just that there's this wonderful day as I wake up in the morning and give myself to the Lord, that there is favor and blessing for me in the land of the living. Psalm 27:13. If my heart would have been broken, or my heart would have despaired if I didn't believe that that I will receive God's goodness in the land of the living, something close to that. But that became such an encouragement for me to work through that. And I don't even know how many. I have sheets somewhere I could look up, but I probably had 20 or 30 of these that were major things. But I still think about that, and I'm encouraged and strengthened by God's truth that he spoke to me that day all those years ago. In terms of self-worth and value and recognition, I'll never get credit for what I do. And it's I have a friend, and she is a deaconess in our church, and she's incredible. But I've seen in so many places and things where she will do something and it is amazing. I mean, she's aware of it, and and I'm aware of it because we prayed about it, different things. But you'll see how this, like, there's some kind of thing affected, some curse, something's going on, because she will not experience credit. She laughs about it now, and she's free in terms of for herself. But it's amazing how often things will happen in which she is denied credit, appreciation for the things that she does, and it's crazy, because I've known about that probably for 15 years. And I've seen it hundreds of times, the way it happens for her. And fortunately, it's something that she's worked through, and she finds in the Lord, she finds peace. But it is, I mean, these things are not made up necessarily. There are things that are activated for whatever reason, where you in an uncommon and crazy way, things will be happening, and something like that will be, there's some spiritual principle that's allowing it to stay around. So my value is what I do. I'm valuable because I do good to others, because I'm successful. I certainly thought that if I didn't stay busy helping people, that was the only thing I had going for me. And we see a lot of striving like that. Even when I do or give my best, it's not going to be good enough. Yeah, that's why a lot of us are depressed and discouraged. When I was a young father, I was going through this. My daughter is now 26, so she was maybe in kindergarten or pre-kindergarten, and I was sitting at the kitchen table, and I was sitting there, and the Lord said, sort of look over at the refrigerator. And I looked over the refrigerator, and my daughter, her name is Joy, she had her paper from preschool or whatever it was on the thing, and it was little math. I don't know if it was 1 + 1, but it was something just that basic. And she had a smiley face, and the Lord sort of said to me, what do you think about that? And I thought, I was so beaming. I said, that's so wonderful. And the Lord said, as like a question, it's like, well, yeah, but it's just so basic, and it's not calculus. It's not, my wife's very good at math. And he was sort of reminding me all these things. And I was like, well, yeah, Lord, but she's only in kindergarten. We can't. And he's like, he says, sort of like, that's the thing, Ron, you never enjoy what you're doing today. You see Joy, and you appreciate that she's wonderful for where she is, but you're always thinking, because you can get better in the future, that your best for today isn't good enough. He told me, your best is always good enough for me. It was so beautiful. And to see that, say, yeah, she's doing great for where she is. And that doesn't mean she won't get better. But the fact that I knew that I would be growing more, the enemy robbed me of the joy for being where I was. Anyway, so I'll choose to be passive in order to avoid conflict. Some people get aggressive. Well, I'm gonna take the conflict head on and I get what I want. But other people are passive to avoid conflict. We often see this in marriages and stuff, and people sort of abdicating presence to work through things because it's so painful to experience disapproval. God doesn't care if I have a secret life as long as I appear to be good. Anyway, then there's the control ones to avoid hurt. By the way, some of these, you hear it, and it'll when you write yours out, you'll need to change the words so that it feels right for you. So if it's not quite right, so it's not quite like that, then you rewrite even the ungodly belief the way it is for you. And then when you hear the godly belief, you want to find scriptures that support that in time. But basically, once you go through the ministry thing and you pray through that, you don't want to be repeating the ungodly belief, but you do want to be repeating and rehearsing and really lingering on the goodness of what God spoke, and then finding supports in the scripture, so that's something that could come and embed it within you. And they recommended at that time, I've seen 30 or 40 days. I believe at the time they were telling us to pray through those, the things that God had spoken to us, for 30 days. And many of those, we did for longer than that, because it was as long as it kind of came back. But when I go back in my sheets, none of those things, I'm sure there's more. It's not that we can't keep growing, but the ones that were there at that time, by God's grace, they really got uprooted in the most wonderful way. And, just so amazing. I couldn't imagine back then of ever getting free of those things. I didn't know they were ungodly. Number one, they just seem real. And then to have them sort of exposed, and then for the Lord to show me how to pray through. And of course, there was a ministry team that helped me, and it just amazing. And I look back now, all these years later, and I'm just so grateful And the beautiful thing about this group is, of course, we want to minister to others. We have to be people who first let the Lord minister to us, and that's really vital. And so there's these wonderful things that you're going to begin to take advantage of for yourself. If there's areas that, I mean, maybe these are things you work through, I hope so. But if not, a way to work through these things. And then it's the people who've let the Lord heal these things in us that he gives the authority to minister in humility and in authority to minister his blessing and love to other people. And there's just nothing more thrilling than to see somebody else get this kind of breakthrough and to see this thing uprooted in their life. It's so wonderful because we know how much the Lord's done for us. It's just so exciting to be part of seeing someone else experience the same thing. So I have to have a plan every day of my life. I have to continually plan and strategize. I can't relax. I know people who literally in 5 to 15-minute increments from the time they got up, telling themselves when they could, brush their teeth. And I mean, it was just to me, I couldn't have done that. I'm not organized like that. But it's not just that they were that way. It's that they were driven that way, and the fact that they couldn't relax. Eventually it's gonna break some things. It's too much upon the soul if the motivation is coming out of this deep need to avoid hurt, and so the organization is sort of the means by which they're trying to have the perfect life so that they can avoid anything happening to be hurt. It doesn't work that way. So perfect life is one where no conflict is allowed. There's no peace. Yeah, I mean, sometimes the problem which we create to avoid pain is even greater. They say that almost all the mental illnesses are connected with trying to avoid one thing, and then but the thing that's created is even more complicated. So the perfect life is one in which we experience, as conflict comes, we respond in ways that reflect Jesus and his love. Or there's all kinds of things there. My wife had one like that. And anyway, so physical, unattractive, God shortchanged me. Now here's ones where you can see some sort of obvious. I can't tell you how many young women who've prayed through this one. I'm unattractive. I hate my breasts, I hate my legs, I hate my thighs. Where it's not only an ungodly belief, but they really spoke word curses about them. Often men who are shorter, that it grows not only from this ungodly belief that I'm unattractive and God shortchanged me, or whatever there's with a comparison, but then there's this deeper level of self-hatred manifested in sort of cursing themselves and their bodies. This happens an awful lot. And it seems, I think with social media and stuff, I think just there's more time to compare to sort of, the celebrities and these things. And it seems that this is happening even in a more devastating and a bigger way than it was in the past, just by the nature of all the comparison and things that people have. That seems to have even got worse. But anyway, this can go into lots of different directions. And I've certainly heard an awful lot of those through the years. I'm doomed to have certain physical disabilities. They're just part of what I've inherited. So therefore, there's no sense of praying for healing or pursuing the kind of incremental change on this. People just, they've given up. The pain and the thought of this is too much. Impossible to lose or to gain weight. I'm just stuck. I'm not competent, complete as a man or a woman. I think competency, some version of this is incredibly common. Certainly, I had a number of ones connected to that. It's funny, I didn't know so much, and yet for some reason, I was too embarrassed to ask and to get wisdom. I didn't realize that healthy people, that everyone doesn't know things, and healthy people seek advice and wisdom. I thought if I asked advice, that would show everybody how incompetent I was. So that thing reinforced and made me make more and more mistakes. And of course, then made me feel more and more incompetent because I wasn't getting the normal help and wisdom and insight that reasonable people would get. And that was a big one. Again, different facets of that. Again, the empty spaces are just the ideas that, we could there's many others. You might realize, well, I got a different one about, it's not on here, but so it's just symbolizing that there could be many other ungodly beliefs that you might want to have to add in these personality traits. I'll always be whatever. Can't change. You can't teach an old dog new tricks and all these kinds of things. And that's ridiculous. We can all, if you get to the roots, you can't change fruit. Most people, they've tried so hard to change the fruit, but they never changed the root and received the love and the things they needed at the places where they needed it. When you change the roots, the fruit will change. But if you've tried all your life to change some aspect of negative fruit in your life, yeah, you'll give up. You'll hit your head against the wall, say, I can't do it. But if you apply God's grace and love to the roots, amazing things can, of course, take place. Any questions along the way so far? Assume that you turn your mic off and interrupt me. You're free to interrupt me. I'm taking the time just to hopefully kind of poke us in the eye a little bit and stir up these things, because we're going to get an opportunity in a few moments to maybe pick one of these in our small groups. We're going to divide up into the small groups in a few moments and get a chance to an opportunity to pray through one of these and to walk the process. The process is detailed back above. In those, there was prayers sort of to walk through, and there'll be an opportunity for us to do that.
Father
yes.
Ron, Andrea has her hand up.
Okay, please. Yes, Andrea. Yes.
Okay. Hi, Father. One of my questions I have is, when you are praying for these areas of your life, you talked about 30 days, how long it takes to work through it. Are you praying for each, how can I say, each belief in a cycle, or are you praying for that area that
you're praying for the one? So in each cycle, it made, like, some of these you might have, for me, like I had a bunch in shame. I mean, ones that aren't on there. I had so much shame. I was I look back, I think, wow, boy, I had an awful lot of shame. So I would go through and I would repeat the things that the Holy Spirit said as I renounced those. And then there's a process again that's up further up back in the notes. And I prayed those prayers, and then I heard the Lord. I wrote those things down, and then I found Bible verses to support that. I mean, I was raised memorizing Bible verses, so it wasn't hard for me. But I was able to find those things. So then for the 30 days, and some were longer, some seemed to linger harder, other ones seemed to almost disappear, like they never were there. But then I would just go through and say, I received God's truth for me. I mean, one is my wife's was that I would never change, because she prayed me for 10 years, and I was just so locked down, and because I was a priest and religious and all this, I was resistant to any kind of change. And so one of hers was, Ron's never going to change. And the Lord said to her, Ron is changing every day, and he's growing, and he's becoming more like me. So, it's been 20 years she's been praying that one. I mean, so on the hard days, we go back and we remember, wait a minute, this is what the Lord said. It's easy to think, and then to go back to the old. But the idea is that you're doing them, you're getting ingrained within you, and I'm receiving God's truth about this. And we're focusing on it for that 30 days. But then again, some of them we go back to, and we stay more connected. I did have some that were just so profound. I don't really think today that through the years, I have felt that I missed God's best. But I can tell you, I've been encouraged by that one. That one, when the Lord said to me, my best is where I am. And I thought, every day I can turn back to him. And, not so much that I felt like I lost something, but just that was so deep and profound when he said that to me. It's something that nourishes my soul. So you're doing that for, the idea is a minimum of 30 days. And then some of those, it's something that we'll have to go back to more. And that's great. I mean, the main thing is that you have that to go back to and to connect with, and to be strengthened with God's truth. So is that helpful?
Yeah, but what I wanted to just get clarified. So you're saying, let's say you pray into shame. You're not going to, and you're focusing on shame. You're not going to do shame and this one, identity and something else.
You might have one from each of these areas. You might, if you had, I mean, I had multiple ones from almost every area. And so I had in this, back then I had like a handout kind of like this, but it was even bigger, like there's more places to write. And so I would, I'd have to write down the thing, and then I would be praying through it. Now they sat with me. The benefit of the small group is sometimes, I couldn't hear the godly belief. And so the nice thing of having a couple people there is, they were to pray for me, and so we were able to hear it, because some of these just I can't hear how this isn't true, because it just feels so real, and it's got such a deep root in me. So the idea is that but you could have one from all these areas, and you have them out, and then you're repeating that. You're just going back to them daily for those 30 days or longer, depending upon how you're doing on that, and you're just rehearsing and repeating the truth that God's spoken to you. And then we'd have Bible, we were told to find the scriptures that support those things, and it was amazing how many scriptures were there, and so we would that would strengthen me. I'm not just making this up. This is not just too good to be true. This is what God really says about me. And in my case, often I kind of knew the Bible verses. Actually, it was more that I had, because of the ungodly belief, I had this dualism of that's true and it's true for others, but I'm a separate case. I'm just, for some reason, that's not going to be true for me, as if I was the one person that God wasn't going to love or something. And I had a lot of that kind of stuff in me. So, but you're not just, it would have taken me years if I didn't work on, whatever ones I had when I went through. I would work on all those every day. Then once we prayed through them all, for those 30 days, and then I would go back to the ones that would sort of linger or stay around in some. I don't remember which ones, but there were ones that seemed to I didn't seem to put them to death as fully in 30 days, and so I would focus on those ones.
Okay.
Okay.
Bishop Ron, we have
Yes.
Frank's hand is up.
Yes, Frank.
Unmute, please, Frank.
How about now?
Yes.
Okay. It's difficult as I'm sitting here listening to this. Some very interesting stuff. But I'm trying to relate it to the world that we live in today. And I'm seeing so much, I'm hearing so much of what you're saying, that we seem to be, and I have to look at our kids, for instance, in the schools, and what we're teaching our kids now. We're teaching our kids a lot of these ungodly beliefs, like I'm not as good as somebody else, I'm not as smart as somebody else, and the list goes on and on. I look like a boy, but I'm not a boy. Should I have been a girl? It just seems like an awful lot to cover.
Well, it is. We're gonna start with us. If we'll let Jesus get us, then we'll start helping the next and the next. But yes, there's a lot of implication, lots of levels, and I got to speed up only because I got 10 minutes before I release you to your small groups. But I want you to, let's move down. Let's go to the others real quick. Let me just scoot down to the others. So, we have a beliefs about ourselves, but we also, I must be very guarded about what I say. Everything's going to be used against me. Some of us grew up that way, or that was our experience at work or in different places. I've got to hide my emotions. Or I can't give anyone the satisfaction knowing that they've wounded or hurt me. I don't want to be vulnerable, humiliated, shamed. And again, those come out of places where people have experienced those things. So the correct way to respond to someone they offend me is to punish them by withdrawing or cutting them off. Now, I'm a hillbilly. Our best idea is if someone's hurt us, then we want to hurt them first. I think if you do something to me, I want to do something worse, a little Machiavellian. So there's all kinds of ways that can work. Victim down here, big. Authority figures will humiliate me and violate me. I experienced that in the church. We had some very toxic, I believe that they loved God, they knew God, but they weren't healthy people. And they were very toxic. And they said lots of things to humiliate the people, but certainly me as a young guy, I certainly had a youth pastor and others who said things that would, really inappropriate and had really significant damage in my life. Partly because it was one more voice that was saying negative things that I was hearing from my parents. And so when it's coming from someone that's supposed to represent God, well, then that just really deepened the wound very, very much. So values based totally on others' judgment, perception, completely under their authority, the sense of being not having any choices, I will not be known, understood, loved, or appreciated by those close to me. A lot of people are suffering in life, feeling that very much in marriages. And in my case, I mean, Susie's case, I wasn't, I was so struggling with my own stuff. I didn't realize, if you said, do you want to be the kind of man that isn't open and able to listen and care? I would say, no, I want to be that person. But the reality is I was struggling so much in my own dysfunction and unhealth. I was not open or available. So she felt that very, very much. And unfortunately, she had lots of experience to back it up because I acted that way towards her. So I had a lot to repent of and a lot to grow and to change in those ways. So helplessness, I'm out there all alone. If I get into trouble or need help, there's no one to rescue me. A lot of, no one's got our back. There's a lot of that. Relationships, I'll never be able to fully give or receive love. I don't know what it is. If anyone gets close to me, I may get hurt by my heart broken again. I can't risk that. If I fail to please you, I won't receive your pleasure and acceptance of me. Therefore, I must strive even more. I must do whatever is necessary to please you. You see people do this with priests and pastors. And part of this is pastors subconsciously are people who represent fathers and mothers. But so people who didn't get that from their moms and dads, acceptance and approval, often they're trying to please the pastor and really knock themselves out. And they don't realize that what's driving them is this deep sense that they didn't get from their parents, and they're trying to get it from the pastor. Often pastors don't understand that is going on. And so often, I assume that if they knew, then they would handle it different. But often pastors exacerbate that as people are seeking that so much from them. And then here's some big ones. Like, again, if you're raised in the church and Sunday school, all this stuff, God loves other people more than he loves me. God only values me for what I do. My life is just a means to an end. I used to say, I'm just the I got to be careful I say this, but hoe, the garden hoe in the garden. These other people are the roses, but I'm just here to do all the work and do that. That's all I'm here for. So no matter how much I try, I'll never be enough or do enough to please God. Certainly, that was a big one. God has judged me when I relax. I have to stay busy about his work or he'll abandon me. I remember there was a a bumper sticker years ago, and it said, Jesus is coming, look busy. And I thought, yeah, that's how I feel. I got to always be looking busy, and I got to stay busy or, he won't love me. He'll be upset with me. So God's judging me. God has let me down before. He may do it again. I can't trust him or first feel secure with him. It's interesting. I sort of blame God for all the things the enemy or the devil did. And again, not intellectually, but emotionally, those things, it's amazing how disconnected I was because I knew the right theology. I knew the Bible, but emotionally, these wounds from childhood, I didn't know how to get them fixed, and I didn't realize I was carrying them. If you had asked me, do you believe these things? I would say no. But the truth is, my behaviors showed, and that's when I finally caught it, was my behaviors show I do believe this. I mean, my mind knows this, but my heart doesn't know this. And I'm acting out of my emotions, and it's proving that while I think I have all the answers, I don't, because that's not how I live. When there's under any kind of stress, I would revert back to these kinds of things. Anyway, God was so kind to me. Your kindness leads us to repentance, O Lord, and his love came and met me, and then invited me by his Spirit to get real with myself and be open to acknowledging these things and to let him come and to heal them and to cleanse them out of my life. So if this is all we did, you could do this for the next 6 weeks, and we keep you busy. There's more. I did the soul. I just thought at least I'd give it to you. It's probably not realistic to think we could cover, word curses and judgments and vows and soul ties, because it's just so big and there's so much. I did want to give you those 7 pages with the notes, but when we break it into small groups, we're going to focus mainly on, maybe we could work through each of us could maybe work through one of the ungodly beliefs. Yes, Kathleen.
You have about 5 more minutes, and I was hoping that you could talk a little bit on the paper that you sent on the bitter roots. Do you have?
Yeah. Okay. So the bitter root judgment. No, let me just move this out of here. Excuse me. Sorry, I got my notes on my iPad sitting here. So bitter root. So this is it's a very helpful sheet because in some ways all these things this is just another way of saying the same thing, and it can help. A bitter root judgment is when you made this judgment and it's happened typically as a childhood, so in childhood, so that it has influenced and impacted your decisions multiplied through all the years of this is how you've been thinking. So I had a man, I was sitting with a man last week, and he is in his late 70s, and he said to me, women just use sex as a weapon. It's just a way to control me. That's what he's telling me about his life and his marriage. And I thought, boy, what a bitter root. And then he told me some things his father told him as a little boy and the things he saw. And I thought, oh, this is so heartbreaking. I actually told him, I gave him some stuff, said, we're going to come back and look at this. But anyway, he says this, and he's revealing this deep, bitter root judgment. And I said, well, what do you think it's like to be your wife, living with someone who that's how he came into the equation? That's what he's been expecting and seeing, and that's how you've been operating. How do you think that's how do you think that influenced her? I mean, obviously, it's tremendous damage and a tremendous mess. So anyway, so you look here, it gives you this process. What's the fruit? What's the presenting problem? Then what's the root? You made a judgment typically out of something that happened, something that was hurtful, and then you say, okay, how did I blame the offender? There's the offender. How did I blame them for that? Then how is this going on? How's the sowing and reaping? How is by living like this, what's the kind of fruit and what's been happening here? And we start writing this stuff out, and what was in my interest? Well, he closed down his heart to his wife. He said 43 years ago, he said, is when he closed his heart down to his wife because of his bitter root judgment. I mean, he didn't know it was a bitter root judgment. In his mind, it was just real. He had a very difficult marriage, and there were a lot of reasons for that. But for 43 years, and by shutting down his heart and holding on to this, it was in his mind a type of self-protection. And he sort of imagined himself as being superior by disconnecting from her. And he thought of her as less and didn't realize that the part that he was playing in all this. So what did I give up? And so I asked, this is the kind of questions I was asking him. And anyway, we're going back. But so then you can take this obviously and work through any kind of ungodly belief or word curses. You can look at this. You could also, of course, say what happened to me in terms of what was said over me. Some of us, we had coaches or teachers say, you'll never be good enough, or you're not smart, or and it's not hard just to kind of turn this around. It's put here as a judgment, something that we concluded, but it's also you could kind of work through this process for almost any of these things, and then you see that the same kinds of the repentance comes. I think the big thing is repentance comes. You change the way you think about things, but we're only really safe to do that when we are able to receive God's love. It comes not from being cornered. It comes from a place of really realizing that the grace of Jesus, he died on the cross and he paid for all of our sins. And it's because we're completely loved as we are, that we're able then to open up and to let him come into this mess. You can't really get there. You can't really change your mind if you're feeling defensive or attacked or ashamed. And so part of, again, the beauty of hopefully being a good group or having this happen in a place I did, where the people there were so caring and loving, that I felt the love of Jesus, and it gave me the courage to be able to open up my heart and to process these things. So then you see the process. This is Elijah House stuff, as you can see, but it's all very similar. And you see the process of forgiving God, etc. Now you say, by the way, let me say that last thing is we got I have a couple of minutes over, but let's say this.
Yeah, you're good. You're good.
Forgiving God is a really big one, and this is important. Everyone knows that God didn't do anything in a sense. All right, meaning, so people say, well, what are you doing forgiving God? He's not. Well, no, but here's the thing. I know a woman who, when her mother died, I think she was 7, and they told her, Jesus needs another angel. Now, Jesus doesn't need another angel, number one. I mean, first of all, it's a bull-faced lie. But not only that, can you imagine this little girl need a mom, and that she's being told that Jesus was the one who took the mom because he needs another angel, as if he didn't have, I mean, and so the hurt that she felt and the trauma of losing her mother, and then to be told, not only did this terribly happen, but God made it happen, and he made it happen because he just needed one more angel, and not that he didn't have lots of, I mean, so people meant something good. I mean, they didn't, I'm sure they had no idea what they were doing, but by saying this, she grew up this, deep hurt and offense towards God for stealing her mom. And and it's the way that we, again, and there's just lots of other things. People say things and then we infer that what they're saying is this or that. And so we have to forgive God. In a sense, forgiveness is releasing. It's releasing the offense and the hurts. It doesn't mean that the other person, my sister was a better athlete than me until I was 13 or 14 years of age. She was a phenomenal athlete. And I'd get a double, she'd hit a home run. I hated her. Everyone cheered for her and everyone teased me. And so I had to forgive my sister, but my sister didn't do anything wrong, but it hurt me a ton, but it wasn't her fault. But I had to, but I localized all that hurt on her, even though she didn't do anything. So forgiveness doesn't mean that because I'm forgiving, I'm the right party and the other person's the wrong party. So when we forgive God, it's not because God did something and if we understood the whole thing, but the feeling is, our brain may know it wasn't like that, but the heart feels that. And so we got to release that. And if you don't do that, you won't be able to hear God. You won't be able to be close to him. You won't be able to, there's all kinds of things that are the cost if we hold on to those things. And so we have to make sure and ask the Lord to help us to heal our image of God. That's a very, very important thing if we're going to be able to pray and to receive love, so that we can be able to also, I mean, first of all, because that's just wonderful. It's how we were made to, but also then for us to pray for others. It's really critical that we're receiving. So anyway, there's just, I mean, my wife is laughing. She's like, you could go on for hours and hours. Like, yeah, I could, I got to behave. But I'm hoping that we can just poke you in the eye enough to say, here's something that might be able to help me, and to try it. And I mean, I would think many of us, I would expect there to be lots of these things that will actually be helpful at some level, and not just one, but if we could go through one successfully in a small group. And so, I mean, you're not going to take maybe the most risky one, but one that's real, and to try to process it together. The other thing is, in a small group like that, often we call it piggybacking, more than one person might have the same thing. And so as someone's going through that, even though you're not talking, you're praying or whatever, often you can get healing, and you can go through that process internally with the several other people, and amazing things can happen. I've even seen this happen as I've been in Indian places where there's thousands of people and you're praying, and so many of them, the Holy Spirit's touching at the same time. It's just amazing. So that's what we're hoping, is that you'll have the courage to have at least a few of us or all of us in a small group. I know that Kathleen's already assigned people, or she's got at least a system, and she'll tell you about this in a second. But if we could try to just process a few of these and get our feet wet, and maybe then somebody will say, hey, I need to follow up. Myself or others, we might be able to figure out a time where we could come back if some of you are stuck. I don't know that on some of these, if I hadn't had a team there helping me here and to pray with me, I don't know that I could have on my own got there. Not because they're so complicated, they were so painful. And so I needed some people to be with me in that. And if we need to follow up outside of this class, but in some other format, I'm sure Kathleen can help. We could follow up in various ways, and we certainly don't want to leave you hanging. But hopefully tonight we can work through one or two or something, and begin to see how this thing works. Kathleen.